Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. So let's start the discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have selected 8 important articles for a detailed and comprehensive coverage so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. Now, before we start the analysis, I have a couple of important announcements. Unacademy is running a 3-day free trial, which allows all of you to access our classes, our plus classes, on the Unacademy app, absolutely free of cost for a 3-day period. This trial period started on the 1st of October and it will come to an end today, that is the 3rd of October. So, if you want to check out our classes, and if you want to be taught by India's top educators, then you can access our classes for free and try out different subjects and different educators. So please make use of this offer so that you can even cover some important topics and chapters today itself. And if you're looking for a full subscription, Unacademy is providing a festive offer at 24,999. You will get a 12-month subscription with an additional 1 month free extension. So those interested, click on the link provided in the video description and enter the code IAS English to avail the discounted price. And if you want the PDF of today's session, please join our official Telegram channel by scanning the QR code on your screen. After the session ends, we will be sharing the PDF over here. So with this, let's get started and look at the first article. On page number 8, there is an editorial which is related to polity. So let's talk about this article in detail. This editorial is focused on the Special Intensive Revision or the SAR exercise, which the Election Commission of India recently carried out in the state of Bihar. As Bihar preps for the upcoming state elections, the Election Commission undertook a massive exercise to basically come out with the new list of electoral rolls to ensure that the electoral rolls are updated and accurate to maintain the integrity of the voters list. Now, this is a mandate of the Election Commission of India under the RPA, the Representation of People Act. The Election Commission has a constitutional duty as well to update the electoral roll, that is the voters list, ensure that all eligible voters are included, and any ineligible voters, their names must be removed, must be deleted. Because over a period of time, in the voters list, there will be names of those voters who might have passed away. There would be voters who have migrated to a different constituency. So there is a need to ensure that the voters list is once in a while, it is put through a process of sanctification, where you clean out the voters list, remove those names which should not be there, and ensure all the eligible voters are added into the list. So Election Commission conducts this massive exercise once in a while, the SAR exercise, Special Intensive Revision, and recently it was carried out in the state of Bihar. Now this exercise generated a lot of controversy, a lot of criticism against the Election Commission. Now this is a topic that we have discussed several times. Now the reason why we are discussing the topic again is because there is a proposal coming from some corners that there should be a nationwide SAR exercise conducted. Even the Election Commission has suggested that it is considering to update the voters list across the country, all across India. So what would be the implications of such a nationwide SAR exercise? What are the risk factors involved? What should the Election Commission watch out for? And why such an exercise is necessary, but the method through which it is done, that is something the Election Commission should work upon. Because the SAR exercise in Bihar was largely filled with errors, and that was the prime reason why the Election Commission of India faced so much criticism. Now, for example, you look at the total number of voters who were listed in Bihar before the SAR exercise, it was 7.89 crore. When the final list was published after the SIR exercise, the number of voters came down to 7.42 crore. So around 47 lakh voter names were deleted from the list. In the draft list that was published, around 65 lakh voters were removed from the list. So when such a large exclusion is being carried out, there is always a risk that genuine voters who are eligible to be on the list might also get excluded. Because it's all about how the process is carried out. See, on paper, Election Commission has a legal constitutional duty to keep the list updated and accurate. Such an exercise is definitely necessary to clear out the names which are not eligible to vote. But the way in which it is done, the manner in which the exercise is carried out, is something that's very, very crucial. Because in the Bihar Sir exercise, even the Supreme Court had to intervene. The Supreme Court had to step in, which highlighted the flaws present in this exercise. If you talk to the voters in Bihar, they will tell you the lived reality of the SIR exercise. Because this exercise which was done in Bihar, it was basically casting a doubt, a suspicion on all the voters. Voters were asked to prove their eligibility, that whether you're eligible or not, prove it through these documents. So when you carry out the exercise with a doubt, with a suspicion, and place the onus on the voters, you're placing the burden, the responsibility on the voters to prove their eligibility. The whole process itself will become hostile. The lived experience of the voters in Bihar tells you a very different story. People had to run behind each and every booth level officer to ensure that they had the right documents, to ensure that their names were included. There have been many cases which were reported, which have been noted to the Supreme Court as well, that eligible voters were excluded. So such an exercise, if it is not carried out in the right manner, it can result in several cases of unfair exclusions. There is also a possibility that ineligible voters may be an illegal migrant. They might have fake documents or they might have even procured original documents. What if they get listed as eligible voters, resulting in unfair inclusions on the voters list? So the Election Commission has not been able to tackle this problem effectively on the ground. Because the documents that Election Commission was asking, those documents may not be present with several voters, especially with women, those from backward classes, from SC, ST community members. They may not possess all the documents that Election Commission was insisting upon. Now, if you look at the names that have been removed from the voters list, there is a disproportionate trend which becomes very apparent. More women voters have been excluded as compared to the male voters. So this itself has raised some suspicion about the whole exercise that was carried out. Maybe women were not aware to come out and get their names registered, or maybe they didn't possess the documents. There is a counter argument to this. The counter argument is that women voters might have, their names might have been misused, fake entries might have been done. But again, this argument largely falls apart, because if you take the migration patterns as well, usually when migration happens, the male members of the family would have moved out to other cities in search of jobs. Women would have remained back. Even if families have shifted out, by and large, women of the household would have remained back taking care of the family. So when more women voters are excluded from the list, this raised concern, because it should have been the other way around. If migration was the real factor here, resulting in the deletion of these voter names, it should have been more male voters who should have been removed from the list. So there was a issue with this as well. Maybe women didn't possess the documents. Maybe they weren't aware that they had to step out, reach out to the booth level officers and get their names enlisted. The documents that Election Commission was insisting upon was primarily birth certificate, caste certificate, domicile certificates, which not every family, not every community might possess. As I said, women in particular and backward lower classes, they may not possess all these documents. And Election Commission was refusing to accept Aadhaar as a proof of verification. The Supreme Court itself had to step in. and push the election commission to consider Aadhaar as a valid document for the SIR exercise. So the lived experience of the voters in Bihar tells you a very different story, that the process in which this exercise was done, it was not the most appropriate. There would have been cases of unfair exclusions. The voters essentially had to face the entire burden of getting themselves listed. So such an exercise, if conducted across the nation, could have serious ramifications for democratic elections in the country. That is why the editorial is warning the election commission, presenting a note of caution that such an exercise is necessary. Correct. Nobody is against the SIR exercise. A nationwide SIR would be necessary, obviously, to ensure that the integrity and accuracy of voters' list is maintained. This, after all, is the duty of the election commission as well. But however, the manner in which it will be done, the kind of documents which will be considered, this is something which should be kept in mind. The process, the documents which are asked for, and the voters should not feel that the suspicion is on them, that they have to prove themselves that they are eligible voters. Instead, the election commission can follow the previous practice which was seen in early 2000s. Almost 2 decades ago, when the SIR exercise was done, the election commission more relied upon door to door enumeration, where enumerators would visit door to door to basically check the voters, whether they were residing there, check the documents. So that would not be a very hostile process. You're not basically putting that burden on the voters to come out and prove themselves. In fact, even studies have shown that door to door enumeration tends to be more effective. The International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Association has carried out a global study which shows that to purify the voters list, to ensure its sanctity, to get the names deleted, especially of those voters who have passed away, those voters who have shifted their residence and migrated, the best way to do it is through door to door enumeration, where the local booth level officers and the enumerators will visit every household and carry out a check so that the list can be purified. In that case, it won't be a hostile process. It won't be that voters will have to come out and prove themselves with the required list of documents. An election commission should be accepting documents like the Aadhaar or even ration cards. It should not insist upon only few set of documents which everybody may not possess. It should be an all-inclusive process. It should not result in any case of unfair exclusion. Even if one voter is excluded unfairly, then that would be a miscarriage of justice. It would essentially derail the whole process of free and fair elections. So if these steps can be ensured by the election commission, then a nationwide SIR is feasible. Otherwise, with the current experience in Bihar, replicating the same model across the country could have a serious negative ramification, according to this editorial. The editorial is also suggesting that election commission can employ digital tools to ensure the efficiency and the accuracy of the entire process. Aadhaar can be one such tool which will actually help in the easy verification of the voters. But election commission has been hesitant to accept this document. So this is what we take away from this editorial. Now, based on this, let's look at a practice question and discuss the answer writing approach as well. The question says, a nationwide special intensive revision will replicate the risks revealed in Bihar's SIR exercise. In the light of the statement, evaluate how the Election Commission of India can revise the electoral rolls while maintaining its integrity and inclusivity. See, if you read the editorial by yourself, you'll actually realize that the editorial is highly biased. The editorial is essentially targeting the Election Commission and the SIR exercise. But the explanation I gave you was a slightly more balanced version of that, where I tried to take out that bias and presented the counter argument as well. Election Commission, as I said, has a duty, a legal constitutional duty, to ensure the voters list integrity accuracy is maintained. So SIR exercise is absolutely essential, unlike what the editorial seems to suggest. But the way in which it is done, the kind of documents which are asked, and ensure that you don't put the burden on the voters, this is what needs to be taken care of by the Election Commission. But editorial does provide some valuable suggestions like use of digital tools for easy verification, door-to-door enumeration. That is something Election Commission should try and incorporate. So please ensure that in your answers, you bring that balance. Don't show a biased narrative because that would reflect poorly on you as an aspirant. You need to be able to perceive both the sides, understand both sides of the argument, and present a more balanced version in your answer. So for this question, it can be a slightly controversial question because it has political overtones attached to it. So please be careful when you're writing an answer. Ensure that you don't bring any political bias into your answer. Answer should not seem one-sided. So what you can do is in the introduction, talk about the role of Election Commission of India, how it has a duty to update the voters list. What is the necessity for a SIR exercise? Explain that background so that you will cover the concept as well. Right? You can talk about the role of Election Commission. What is its duty? What is expected by the Constitution? What is expected through the RPA? And how it places this duty on the Election Commission to ensure the sanctity of the voting process by maintaining the upgraded voters list. So that provides for a good introduction where you are highlighting the necessity for a SIR exercise, meaning it is indispensable. It has to be done because there are some who are arguing that such an exercise should not be conducted. That wouldn't be the right argument to make in an answer. To ensure you point out that Election Commission has a constitutional legal duty, it's bound by this mandate to update the voters list and ensure that its accuracy is maintained. So point out that SIR exercise is indispensable. It has to be carried out. But in the body, discuss the experience from Bihar. Discuss the challenges that were faced, the criticism that came up. What did the Supreme Court observe? Why did Supreme Court push Election Commission to consider Aadhaar as a document? Point out these issues and challenges and accordingly suggest a way forward. This has to be the body of your answer. So in the introduction, you have highlighted why SIR is indispensable, why it is necessary. Then you're talking about the lived experience of the people of Bihar, how the voters faced a lot of problems and challenges, what were the flaws in the exercise, and suggest a way forward. What can be done? So provide these suggestions, door-to-door enumeration. Don't put the blame on the voters. Let the Election Commission reach out to the voters and consider all the documents available. And employ digital tools for easy verification. Spread more awareness. Ensure all communities, all sections of the society are included in the exercise. So that can be your way forward, and conclude your answer by talking about the need for protecting the free and fair nature of elections in a democratic polity. Why it is essential to hold free and fair elections to uphold democratic ideals, and how voters list plays a critical role in this. That can be your conclusion. So you can tie up the entire answer, creating a logical connection between the introduction and the conclusion. So this will ensure that there is a proper structure as well, a logical flow of thought. That is what UPSC will look for in the mains exam. So I hope this approach will help you write your answers, practice your answer writing. Now let's look at the next article, a very interesting, very important article. This column on page number 8 related to internal security under GS paper 3. The article is written by Harsh V. Pant, a very well-known academician who works for the ORF, Observer Research Foundation, a well-known think tank that specializes in foreign policy and security affairs. This article is focused on the changes that are taking place, the reforms which we are witnessing in the armed forces of India. See, today the battlefield is evolving at a rapid pace. The evolution which is happening in the battlefield is something that has taken armed forces around the world by surprise. Look at the Ukraine conflict, look at the Gaza war and the wider conflict in West Asia. Look at how military doctrine has undergone a change. Look at how technology is playing a defining role in today's combat. You take Operation Sindoor between India-Pakistan. Look at the decisive role played by technology, especially disruptive technology, drones and unmanned aerial systems, AI-based command control systems, satellite-based surveillance. Look at the transformative role of new age technology in defining the future of combat. In fact, the new battlefield is not in the future, it's already here, it's already right in front of us. In the last 3 4 years, all of you are witnessing the new age warfare driven by new technology, new doctrines. And this is something that will pose a significant challenge for India's armed forces. I mean, the changes are happening at such a fast rate that if you don't adapt, if you don't keep pace with the changes, you will become outdated. And in tomorrow's conflict, you will end up losing the conflict to the adversary if you're not updated in terms of your doctrine, in terms of your organizational, administrative skills, in terms of adoption of new age technology. So this requires for overall reforms of the armed forces, the way they are structured, the way they operate on the battlefield. See, the traditional era of wars is gone, where armies would focus only on land warfare, navies would focus on only on the maritime theater, the air force would only focus on the airspace. That era is long gone. Today, what you're witnessing is a complete synergy between land, water, and air. The forces, the armed forces, will have to ensure that they don't get stuck in these silos that they have created for themselves. You can't fight today's battles and future wars by operating in silos. You need to create synergy between your forces. You need to build jointness between different armed forces. And this calls for a complete doctrinal shift. And this has to start right from recruitment, training, military education, and to the stage of operational deployment. So, across all stages of military planning, you need synergy, you need jointness between different branches of the armed forces. Not just your army, navy, and air force, even your defense agencies in the cyberspace domain, in the space domain, involved in space warfare. All these branches of the armed forces have to come together, abandon the silos that they're operating in, and create synergy between them and work in a harmonized fashion to ensure that they present a united front. So, this will provide for optimization as well when it comes to defense expenditure. It will reduce the overlap, the unnecessary, wasteful expenditure which is sometimes incurred when armed forces are operating in different silos. So, that is the focus of this article here. The writers are talking about this because recently the Combined Commanders Conference was held in Kolkata, where even Prime Minister Modi participated and addressed the Indian military commanders. The Combined Commanders Conference is a very important event as far as India's security is concerned, because this is where the military commanders take stock of India's security threat perception and they plan for the future. So, the theme for this year's Combined Commanders Conference was the year of reforms, meaning the armed forces are looking for major reforms in the coming months, in the coming years, so that the forces can transform themselves to be prepared for the future of the battle, to be prepared for future of warfare. So, one issue which the armed forces are right now addressing is the issue of inter-service operations. Meaning, if there is a joint operation involving forces from, let's say, Army, Navy, and Air Force, the question is who will exercise disciplinary control and administrative authority over a joint operation? Let's say there is a counter terrorist operation going on involving forces from the Army and the Air Force. Or let's say there is a battle taking place where Army, Navy are jointly involved in a joint mission. So, when soldiers from these different forces are involved in a joint operation, who will exercise the disciplinary authority? Which commander will exercise the administrative authority? Would it be a commander from the army or from the navy or from the air force? This remains one of the questions which needs to be addressed. So Defense Ministry has prioritized this particular reform. The inter-services organizations rules, they are being reviewed and updated to ensure that we can define how joint operations can take place. Which commander from which force will exercise disciplinary and administrative authority in such joint operations. So this is one major step the Ministry of Defense has undertaken in coordination with the armed forces of India. Apart from this, India is really upgrading its preparation for theater based commands, for the creation of joint unified commands. In fact, when the role of CDS was created, the Chief of Defense Staff, when it was created in 2019 and the office was set up in 2020, one of the primary objective was to promote the creation of jointness, to provide for creation of theater based commands or unified commands. Now, if you look at armed forces around the world, especially in major military powers, they already have theaterization. Theater based commands have been set up, meaning when it comes to operational role, they don't have separate army, navy, air force. Rather, they all synchronize and work together, they fuse together and operate as a theater based command. For maritime theater, there would be a tri-service force drawing from army, navy, and air force. For air defense, there would be a unified air defense command, again drawing personnel and equipment from all the three forces. So this basically provides for greater optimization, reduces wasteful expenditure. It provides for greater synergy in operations and achieves effective results. So that is the reason why when you look at United States, if you look at NATO, most of the European militaries, China, Russia, they they are largely having integrated commands, joint unified commands. So this is the eventual goal of India as well, to ensure that we have theater based commands. And this was one of the primary mandates given to the CDS, the Chief of Defense Staff. The CDS is the highest ranking military officer in the country. The CDS is ranked even above the Army Chief or the Navy or Air Force Chief. The CDS heads the Chief of Staff Committee. The CDS is now the permanent chairman of the Chief of Staff Committee, where the three service chiefs come together. So CDS has this important role today to build jointness between the forces and create theater-based commands and unified joint commands. See, currently we do have a couple of joint unified commands. For example, we have the SFC. Have you heard of it? The Strategic Forces Command, which is responsible for maintaining and operationalizing India's nuclear arsenal. If ever India goes to a nuclear war, those nuclear weapons would be operationalized by the SFC, the Strategic Forces Command, which is a unified command, drawing personnel and equipment from Army, Navy, and Air Force. It is the custodian of India's nuclear arsenal. Then we also have the Andaman Nicobar Command, a tri-service command. At Andaman Nicobar Islands, Army, Navy, and Air Force operate under a joint tri-service command. So currently, these are the only two joint theater-based or unified commands that we have today. But going forward, India has some very ambitious plans. The CDS will work with the three services to ensure that we create theater-based and joint unified commands which will meet the requirements of the future security threats that we are going to deal with. For example, for handling logistics, there could be a single unified logistics command. Right now, Navy, Army, Air Force, they have their separate logistic units. So that results in overlap, wasteful expenditure, reduces efficiency as well. How about having a single unified logistics command which will cater to the requirements of all the three forces? Same with air defense. Right now, Army has its own Army Aviation Unit. Army has its own air defense unit as well. Air Force primarily deals with air defense. Navy has its own air defense unit. How about merging all of them together to create one unified theater-based command which will deal with air defense? Then the proposal is to have a maritime theater command. Under the Navy, bring the assets of Air Force and Army as well together to create a single theater-based command for all the maritime operations. Then towards the northern and the eastern fronts, where we have our adversaries, China and Pakistan. India can have a theater-based command, a northern theater and an eastern theater command, where all three services again will operate under a single unified authority. So this concept is something India is working upon, and we are already seeing some initial signs regarding this. In 2018, India set up three agencies. Three important agencies were set up in 2018: the Defense Space Agency, Defense Cyber Agency, and the Armed Forces Special Operations Division. So, to deal with space warfare, cyber warfare, and to bring all the special forces of India together, these three tri service units were created. They were recommended by various important committees. For example, the Kargil Review Committee, the KRC, which was set up after the Kargil War under Dr. K. Subramaniam, the father of India's current Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. The Kargil Review Committee had recommended the creation of such theater-based commands and unified commands, especially to deal with space warfare, cyber warfare, etc. The Naresh Chandra Task Force under the Manmohan Singh government. Naresh Chandra was the former cabinet secretary, and under his leadership, the Naresh Chandra Task Force had been created to provide suggestions for security reforms in India. The Naresh Chandra Task Force also had recommended the creation of such tri-service units with command status. But the government of India, in consultation with the armed forces and the security establishment, has created these units but without command status. They have been set up as tri-service agencies and divisions. They're all operating under the Integrated Defense Staff, IDS, HQ IDS, where the three services basically merge to create jointness in operations. Is that clear? The three services, the Army, Navy, Air Force, they are part of the IDS, a tri-service organization, which brings synergy and jointness between the forces in operational matters. So under the IDS, these agencies have been set up. Your Defense Space Agency, headquartered in Bengaluru. Your Defense Cyber Agency, headquartered on the outskirts of Delhi in Gurugram. Then you have Armed Forces Special Forces Division, where all the special forces are brought together under one unified division. Be it the para special forces of the Army, the Garud of the Indian Air Force, the Marcos of the Marine Commandos of the Indian Navy. So this has brought greater synergy as far as our joint operations are concerned. Recently, there was another big announcement by the CDS. India has recently set up new brigades, the Rudra and Bhairav. This is another step towards bringing that synergy and jointness in such operations in the future. Rudra and Bhairav are two new specialized units which are being created from the existing forces itself. Rudra will be an all-arms brigade within the Indian Army. Rudra brigades will be positioned across the northern, western, and eastern sectors facing Pakistan and China. These would be all-armed brigades, meaning all the different branches of the army would be unified, from infantry to artillery to armory to the drone units, air defense units. They will all come together under the Rudra brigades, including special forces, so that army operations can be synchronized. The Rudra brigades will consist of all the units of the army, from infantry to artillery to armory units. Then Bhairav would be a dedicated special force unit, light commando battalion, positioned close to the border to engage in special operations, covert operations behind enemy lines when necessary. Special forces, they can operate in small teams, in small units. They are highly trained, highly motivated. They are equipped with better weapons and ammunition as well. So these Bhairav units, these are light commando battalions deployed closer to the border with Pakistan and China, which can engage in special operations and covert operations behind enemy lines. They can be super effective in limited conflicts. So this is another step that the armed forces have taken to bring that jointness and synergy and create a single unified front against the enemy. Then look at how our doctrine and technology also is being redefined and upgraded. Today, the Indian Army and Indian Air Force are working together after Operation Sindoor to integrate their air defense commands. During Operation Sindoor, you might have heard about the integrated air command control system of Indian Air Force, how it played a pivotal role in protecting Indian airspace from Pakistani strikes, in intercepting Pakistani drones and missiles. You would have heard about Akash Tir, an AI-enabled automated command control system that, that is operated by the Indian Army as part of Army's air defense, which was also very, very effective in tracking and taking down Pakistani projectiles. So now the Army and Air Force are fusing the two air defense units. Akash Tir is being fused with the integrated air command and control system of the Indian Air Force, creating a unified air defense unit. Then the Navy, which is contemplating a carrier based fleet, is in the process of procuring the Rafale fighter jets, the marine variant, Rafale M, to dominate the maritime space. So, as the Navy builds a carrier based fleet to transition into a true blue water Navy, Navy will collaborate with Army and Air Force to ensure that there is a unified front which is presented. Eventually, this might transition into a joint theater based command, the Maritime Theater Command. So, all the forces are taking these necessary steps to create the future hybrid warriors. Because please understand, today's war, it's not just about the kind of weapons you possess, the kind of physical strength you bring into the battle, but it's more about the speed with which you act. It's more about the doctrines, the training, the education that plays a critical role, and also about the ability to get intelligence and handle information effectively. That's why the armed forces are redefining their doctrines. In 2017, the Defense Ministry brought out the Joint Doctrine of the Indian Armed Forces. The Army's Land Warfare Doctrine was revised, updated in 2018. Recently, the first ever tri-service seminar was held on the future of war and war fighting called Run Samvad. This is the first ever tri-service conference or a seminar that was hosted, which brings all three forces to discuss their ideas and plan the integration of the three services. So, to prepare for the future battles and conflicts, you need such reforms to be introduced, and India is doing it step by step. See, we need not blindly replicate China's model or the model of US or NATO. India is trying to come out with a reform model which suits the Indian context, which can be customized to the requirements of Indian armed forces and the threats that we face, the threat perception that India faces. So these are some big changes which are happening when it comes to the overall structure of the Indian armed forces. So please keep track of these developments. In the coming years, you're going to see some very, very big changes. So based on this, take up a mains practice question. Changing battlefield dynamics require an adaptive military. As I told you, the military should adapt, it should learn, it should constantly keep updating itself to adapt to the changing dynamics in the battlefield. So that's a statement which has been given. In the light of this statement, examine India's recent military reforms and the importance of theaterization, joint and unified commands. So based on what we have discussed, try to write a good answer for this question. Try to practice your answer writing. Now, moving on, we have another important article related to economy and environment and ecology on page number 10. This article focuses on green hydrogen. I'll explain what is green hydrogen, why it is important, why it is gaining so much importance. We'll understand the dominating role of China when it comes to green hydrogen production. And to produce green hydrogen, you need something known as a electrolyser. Currently, China dominates the production of electrolyzers, which is critical to produce green hydrogen. So let's understand this topic in detail. Let's break it down. And we will go beyond the article. I'll not just limit myself to the given article. We will discuss some important facts, some important concepts, which can help you answer some prelims and mains questions. So first of all, what is green hydrogen? Hydrogen, as you all know, is essentially H2. But hydrogen can be a clean power source to power your vehicles, to power industries, to even store the energy which is produced from solar, wind, and hydro, which are clean, renewable forms of energy. The best part is when you use hydrogen, the exhaust is basically water vapor, right? There is no carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions when hydrogen becomes the source of power. You can end your dependency on fossil fuels. That's why green hydrogen is a transformative fuel, a fuel for the future. It's considered as one of the cleanest form as far as all sources of energy is concerned. But however, producing green hydrogen is not so easy. It's a very challenging task. Hydrogen is primarily produced through the electrolysis of water. See, your regular hydrogen is used in various industries. It is used in oil refining industry. It's used in multiple other industries as well, in metallurgical industries, etc. But green hydrogen is a very distinct type of hydrogen. And let's understand what this is. So hydrogen is produced through the process of electrolysis, where a water molecule is split, H2O is split into its basic constituents, hydrogen and oxygen, H2 and O2. This process that produces hydrogen will only give out oxygen as the other byproduct of the reaction, and H2 can become the source of power which you can use for various activities, a clean fuel. And the byproduct of this combustion, right? Not essentially combustion, the byproduct of this usage of hydrogen as a source of fuel will be just water vapor. You'll again bring back H2O, that's it. So this can be the cleanest form of fuel that you can think of to power your vehicles, your industries, etc. But however, hydrogen is currently produced using different methods. Depending on the method, depending on the raw material which is used to produce hydrogen, it is named using different colors. We not just have green hydrogen. We also have gray hydrogen, blue hydrogen, brown, pink, turquoise, whatnot. These types of hydrogen, it's named basically on the source through which it is produced, the raw material which is used to produce it. Green hydrogen is the cleanest form when renewable energy is used to power the electrolyzer. I told you, right? To produce hydrogen, you basically take water molecule and you use electrolyzers to break them up to create hydrogen and oxygen. But to power the electrolyzer, you need enormous amount of power, electricity, which comes usually from fossil fuel based sources. Or if you bring it from clean renewable sources, then that becomes green hydrogen. Let's say the energy generated through solar, wind, hydro, nuclear. If these power sources are used to power your electrolyzer to produce hydrogen, then that is the cleanest form of hydrogen because it's not contributing to greenhouse gas emissions, and that is called green hydrogen. But if natural gas is used without carbon capture, then that variant is called gray hydrogen because it will contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. Then blue hydrogen is again produced from natural gas but with carbon capture and storage, where you capture the emissions generated and you store and lock it away to ensure it doesn't get released into the atmosphere. So that type of hydrogen is also relatively clean and it's called blue hydrogen. Then you have brown or black hydrogen produced from coal gasification. This is probably the dirtiest form of hydrogen as it contributes to very high emissions. Pink or purple hydrogen, again, a very clean form of hydrogen as it is powered basically through nuclear energy. When energy come from a nuclear reactor is used for electrolysis to produce the hydrogen, it's called pink or purple hydrogen. Again, a very clean form. Then you have turquoise, where methane pyrolysis, where solid carbon is the byproduct. So carbon in solid form as output is fine as long as it's not in the form of CO2 or greenhouse gas emissions. Solid carbon can be easily stored and disposed. So this again is relatively cleaner. So depending on its carbon footprint and the source raw material, hydrogen is classified into different names based on these different colors. Now, using hydrogen as a source of power, it has its pros and cons. It has a lot of advantages. The biggest advantage is zero emissions. Byproduct is obviously water vapor, nothing else. It is very versatile, can be used across economic activities. From powering your vehicles, you have hydrogen powered vehicles, to powering industries and powering every economic activity. It is a potential storage solution because see, solar and wind energy, they're not consistent, right? It depends on sunlight availability, depends on wind speed. So it's not consistent throughout. So there's a need to generate solar wind energy whenever it's feasible and store that energy. So for storing, you need huge battery farms. But instead, how about using that energy to power electrolyzers to carry out electrolysis and produce clean green hydrogen? And this hydrogen is storable. You can store this easily. Is that clear? It can decarbonize even the hard to abate sectors like steel, cement, metallurgy, shipping, and aviation. These difficult industries, which are hard to decarbonize, can also be decarbonized with green hydrogen. That is where its true potential lies. And it'll actually bring energy independence to the countries which invest in green hydrogen. Because you'll no longer be dependent on fossil fuels. Anybody can produce green hydrogen if they have the technology, if they have electrolyzers with them. If they can invest enough money and research, they can easily produce hydrogen on their own. Right? Water is available with everyone. All you need is electrolyzer and invest sufficiently in the technology. But there are disadvantages, drawbacks. One major drawback is that hydrogen is highly flammable, meaning it's very risky to store. Hydrogen is highly flammable and it can easily catch fire. The high cost setting up hydrogen plants are currently very, very expensive, almost 2 to 4 times costlier. When you compare with your traditional sources of fuel and energy, it's much, much costlier to produce hydrogen, especially green hydrogen. Then it requires a lot of electricity. Let's say you want to produce only green hydrogen, which is the cleanest form, then you need massive amounts of solar and wind capacity to power the electrolysis process. So this again requires substantial investment in clean renewable energy, in solar and wind projects, which again is not cheaper. Creating the infrastructure itself is a huge challenge because everything has to be built from scratch. And to store hydrogen in the liquid form, you need cryogenic tanks, which basically stores at extremely low temperatures. That's when hydrogen remains stable and you can avoid hydrogen catching fire. So maintaining such conditions and storage facilities is going to be an enormous challenge. As I said, safety concerns are present. Plus, the process of electrolysis will depend on water, right? Water is the raw material. You're splitting water to produce hydrogen. So water requirement will shoot up. And especially in countries where there is a water shortage, this could become a challenge. It could create more water scarcity. So these are the pros and cons of green hydrogen. So please be prepared for this topic. There can be a 10-mark question just on this, asking you to talk about the advantages and shortcomings of green hydrogen. Now coming to China, my last point. What is China doing in the space of green hydrogen? Where does it stand? When it comes to hydrogen production, and especially green hydrogen, today China is the global leader. Without a doubt, it has left every other country miles behind in the competition. China annually produces 36.5 million tons of hydrogen, and out of this, 120,000 tons is green hydrogen. This is almost half the global capacity today. Around the world, cumulatively, the world is producing around 240, 250,000 tons of green hydrogen. China is producing almost half of it, 50%. Look at the dominance China has in this sector. So the electrolyzers that I was talking about, which is the key technology here. Currently, there are two types of electrolyzers that are used. Okay, please pay attention here, concentrate, listen to me carefully. There are two types of electrolyzers used in the market. One is alkaline electrolyzer. The other is proton exchange membrane electrolyzer, PEM electrolyzers. You don't have to go into the details of the technology, not needed. UPSC will not test you on that. Just understand that there are two types of electrolyzers used currently in the market, alkaline electrolyzers and the PEM, proton exchange membrane electrolyzers. Alkaline electrolyzers are low cost, but they're not very efficient. Is that clear? The cost involved in producing an alkaline electrolyzer is relatively less because it is produced using nickel and steel, which is relatively cheaper. I'm not saying it's very cheap. Steel might be relatively cheaper. Nickel is still expensive, but relatively, both nickel and steel are cheaper compared to let's say rare earths and other strategic minerals. And overall, alkaline electrolyzer technology has matured. It has developed over a period of time. The cost of production has gone down. It's a very mature technology, very proven, tested technology. It's low cost, but problem is it's not very efficient. The PEM electrolyzers, they are costly, but they are super efficient. It brings efficiency, but it's very, very costly. And you know why it is costly? Because it requires three precious, crucial minerals: IPT, iridium, platinum, titanium. All three are super expensive, very hard to find, very hard to get hold of. So, this is the current electrolyzer market. China right now dominates the production of alkaline electrolyzers. China currently has a dominating controls 85% of global production of alkaline electrolyzers. Imagine out of 100 alkaline electrolyzers produced in the world, China alone is producing 85 of them. And nobody can match China's cost. Even in Europe, let's say a European company produces an alkaline electrolyzer, the cost they incur is much, much, much higher compared to a China produced alkaline electrolyzer. Now, the point is, how come China does this? How can China produce something at a cheaper cost compared to anyone else in the world? The reason is very simple. See, China, first of all, has focused heavily on manufacturing. It has the right policies in place, right infrastructure, right supply chains, integrated supply chains, and it can produce at scale. So it can keep the cost of production as low as possible. China has easy access to the steel which is available. It has access to nickel. It controls all these supply chains as well. It has given a lot of subsidies to encourage industries, created the right infrastructure for them. So it's super easy in China for Chinese companies to produce these alkaline electrolyzers and dominate the market entirely. If someone else tries, their cost will shoot up and nobody will buy those electrolyzers. This is the advantage, the dominance that China has when it comes to green hydrogen production, because it currently dominates the production of alkaline electrolyzers. But right now, there is one opportunity still left. One opportunity for countries like India. China is struggling with PEM electrolyzers. Even China is finding it difficult to source iridium, platinum, titanium, and it's a more hard, complex technology as well. So this is an opportunity for countries like India to focus on PEM electrolyzers to create self-reliance, to become more independent. Maybe it's very difficult to become Atmanirbhar for alkaline electrolyzers, but for PEM electrolyzers, the market is still wide open. Even China is struggling when it comes to these category of electrolyzers. It might be initially costlier, the upfront cost is higher, but it's very efficient and it's known to bring long-term results. So this will require significant investments in research and development. It will require policy support and infrastructure and integrated supply chains so that domestically we can develop these electrolyzers. I'm sure you know that India has the National Green Hydrogen Mission, right? The National Green Hydrogen Mission, which was launched a few years ago in 2023. So, under the mission, the goal is to make India a hub for green hydrogen production. India has set a goal to start producing 5 MMT of green hydrogen by the end of the decade. And the right policy support, the environment is being created by the government. The government is offering incentives. The government itself is taking the lead role to encourage the private sector and work with our public sector research organizations to focus on production of green hydrogen domestically to reduce our dependency on China. But will it happen? That's a different question altogether. Because right now, the world is dependent on China when it comes to alkaline electrolyzers. Even United States, European countries, they are dependent on China for alkaline electrolyzers because it produces the cheapest alkaline electrolyzer. Is that clear? But however, it's not going to be so easy for China as well. Because today, countries are looking at green hydrogen sector as a strategic sector. Since it can give you energy independence, you can become self-reliant when it comes to energy. Countries are looking at this sector as a strategic sector, meaning there will be strict regulations, strict controls on imports. So it's not going to be easy for China to export its electrolyzers as well. So there are a lot of trade barriers present already. So maybe this is an opportunity for countries like India to become more independent and self-reliant by focusing on PEM electrolyzers along with trying to produce alkaline electrolyzers on our own. Is that clear? So that's the relevance of this article. Now moving on, there's another important editorial. This is related to weather forecasting. It's a small article. I won't waste much of your time here, but we'll just focus on the key takeaway from this editorial. What is the focus of this particular article? See, recently India has received a bountiful monsoon season, right? IMD had predicted that the monsoon this time might be 4% above the normal, above the average. But the actual rainfall received is almost 8% above normal, meaning the IMD got it wrong. Though IMD had predicted a above normal monsoon this time, the percentage is something that is way off the mark. Now, the point is, monsoon prediction, rainfall prediction is very crucial for our agriculture, for our economy, and more importantly, for dealing with disasters. Look at what excessive rainfall has caused in northern and northwestern parts of India. The deadly landslides, the flooding, the human impact, the human loss suffered, the economic loss, the infrastructure damage which is being reported. Especially if you look at Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, northern northwestern parts of India. They have received highly abnormal rainfall due to the factors related to climate change, the changes related to western disturbances, its interaction with the monsoon currents coming in from Bay of Bengal. It has brought in highly unexpected rainfall, highly unexpected season, which has led to these deadly landslides and floods. Then you see across the eastern parts of India as well, right? Even southern peninsular India as well. Heavy rainfall has caused a lot of destruction, having an impact on agriculture, economy, leading to more and more disasters. But however, good rainfall has led to increased sowing of crops. Data from Ministry of Agriculture shows that the sowing of paddy, sowing of pulses, and all the other staple crops, it has gone up significantly, more than double, which means a good rain season ensures better sowing and better agricultural productivity that guarantees our food security. But such repeated disasters, which we are not able to predict, and upon this, we are misclassifying the disasters, where every heavy rainfall is easily labeled by the authorities as a cloudburst. Now, this is a lazy way of designating a heavy rainfall event, right? The inability of the authorities to predict and give early warning and forecasting is now being simplified, and they're turning heavy rainfall incidents into cloudburst events. But there's a world of difference between the two. Cloudburst is a very specific event, an extreme weather event. Of course, heavy rainfall will also cause landslide and floods. Cloudburst will definitely cause landslide and floods, but you can't mix up the two. You can't label every heavy rainfall incident as a cloudburst. That's what we have seen in Himachal Pradesh, in Uttarakhand, in Jammu and Kashmir, in Punjab. So this is where the editorial is urging the IMD to step up its forecasting capabilities. Of course, weather forecasting is a very challenging domain, but there needs to be more accurate forecasting and early warning services. This is what will help India to deal with the impact of disasters, to prepare for them, to plan accordingly, so that we can deal with the impact of landslides and floods. See, heavy rainfall is unavoidable. You have to deal with the impact. But cloudburst, which is a very rare occurrence, if there is prior warning, you can at least mitigate the damage. Maybe you can't prevent it, obviously. You can mitigate the losses by taking precautions, by ensuring the people are evacuated, and you can plan accordingly, plan the development of the region accordingly. So it's very, very crucial here to get our weather forecasting right. And the responsibility lies with IMD and the Ministry of Earth Sciences. So that is the key takeaway from this editorial. Now, coming to the prelim section, four small articles. Let's quickly wrap up While after looking at them, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh was celebrating Vijay Dashmi with the armed forces, has brought up the Sir Creek issue and has sent out a warning to Pakistan. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh was with the security forces at Sir Creek in the Kutch region of Gujarat, where we share a border, land and maritime border with Pakistan. And here, the defense minister sent out a warning that India is aware that Pakistan is building up its military presence and its military infrastructure on the other side of Laki Nala, which is a strategically significant point on the India Pakistan border. So, the defense minister has warned Pakistan that if it is planning some misadventure in the future, India will respond with equal measure. So, this rhetoric based statement was given out by the defense minister. But what is important for us for the exam is what is Sir Creek? Where is it located? Why is this location so important? Sir Creek is a tidal estuary. The tidal estuary that marks the boundary between India and Pakistan. I'm sure you are aware that the Radcliffe Line, which was drawn during partition by the British, is what divided India and Pakistan, right? Both in the west and the east. So now the India-Pakistan border is basically the Radcliffe Line, which is the international border that stretches from Jammu towards Punjab, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. After Jammu, from Jammu towards Kashmir, we have the disputed border, the line of control with regard to the Kashmir issue, which is one of the standing border issues that we have with Pakistan. But from Jammu to Punjab to Rajasthan to Gujarat, we have a defined border where there is no dispute. This entire stretch is a defined, recognized international border, IB. But where IB meets the Arabian Sea, at the last stretch between IB and Arabian Sea, there is this tidal estuary that you see here, which is Sir Creek, where the border is not clearly defined. And this remains another standing border dispute between India and Pakistan. Just like the Kashmir dispute, just like Siachen dispute, Sir Creek is another standing dispute between India and Pakistan. It's a tidal estuary claimed by both the sides. Now, this has serious implications. It right now passes between the Sindh region of Pakistan and the Gujarat state of India. This is your Run of Kutch area, which is a marshy wetland. Where exactly this boundary will be drawn will determine the maritime borders and the extent of exclusive economic zone as well, and access to marine resources. So it not only has strategic implications, it has economic implications as well. More importantly, Pakistan has been misusing this route to enable smuggling and trafficking into India. Since the geography is very complicated here, the terrain is complex. It's a marshy wetland. It's not easy to guard and patrol this boundary, that to a disputed boundary. Pakistani state actors, the army, navy, and ISI, they back the organized criminals to engage in smuggling and trafficking to push drugs and arms and weapons into the Indian side. Plus, Pakistan has been gearing up its military presence on the other side of Sir Creek. And that is what worries India. That Pakistan is possibly preparing for a major military escalation in the future. That's why the defense minister has sent out a warning. Now, if you look at the map here, there are two lines you can notice. There is a red line and a green line. The red line and the green line here. The green line, which you can see here, this represents the claims of Pakistan. Pakistan basically wants entire Sir Creek to itself. But India has a more reasonable demand. We want the claim to be in the middle, right in the middle of the channel of Sir Creek. So Sir Creek gets equally divided. This is according to international law. Under the UN Convention on Law of the Sea, which defines maritime boundaries, there is a doctrine called the Thalweg Doctrine or Thalweg Principle. According to the Thalweg Principle of UN clause, which is recognized under international law, when there is a water body which marks a boundary between two countries, the border should pass in the middle of the navigable channel. So both countries will get a fair share. That is what India claims. We want the boundary to be in the middle of Sir Creek's navigable channel as per the Talvik principle of UN clause. So it's a fair division of this tidal estuary to mark the boundaries. Pakistan does not respect this. Pakistan wants the entire Sir Creek to itself. That's why you can see the green line, which represents the claims by Pakistan. Is that clear? So this remains an unresolved dispute. Next, the world of art and culture, particularly the world of music, classical Hindustani music, has lost a gem, a diamond. Pandit Chhannulal Mishra has passed away, a Padma Bhushan and Padma Vibhushan awardee, a very, very well known name, especially when it comes to art forms such as Thumri and Khayal, which are essentially a part of Hindustani classical music. Pandit Chhannulal Mishra was known for popularizing these forms of Hindustani classical music in the Banaras Varanasi belt in Uttar Pradesh. He had the glory of performing with Ustad Bismillah Khan, and he was known for his recitals of romantic and devotional poems and songs. And he was known for bringing the communal harmony as well, from the verses of Tulsidas to the verses of Kabir, and fusing them together and popularizing these devotional songs and romantic songs, which is very well known and popular in this belt, and as well as in the world of Hindustani classical music. So, in this context, you should understand what is Thumri, what is Khayal. There might be a prelims question based on this. Thumri is a art form, a song based music form of Hindustani classical music, which is specific to the Bhojpuri belt. There is a heavy Bhojpuri influence here, and these songs, they are sung in different languages. It could be in Brij Bhasha, Awadhi, Bhojpuri, and sometimes there is a fusion of Urdu as well, right? And the very term Thumri is drawn from the word thumak, or which is a Bhojpuri word that refers to walking with a dance-like gait, where the performer walks and with a dance-like gait, and they have these ankle bells which trinkle as they sing these songs. So this is an art form specifically seen in the Bhojpuri belt of Uttar Pradesh that uses dramatic gestures, mild eroticism, then evocative love and romantic poetry, folk songs, and you also see devotional spiritual songs as part of it as well. Khayal is a slightly different form, a form of Hindustani classical music. The word itself is drawn from Persian Arabic. Khayal means imagination, right? So here there is greater freedom for the performer, where the performer uses the tabla, and there is more freedom to experiment with the ragas compared to Drupad, which is a more a traditional form of Hindustani classical music. So Pandit Chhannulal Mishra was a master of both Khayal and Thumri. This loss is a big loss for the nation itself. Next, the ANRF, Anusandhan National Research Fund, which was recently set up by the government of India, has developed a portal called SARAL. SARAL stands for Simplified and Automated Research, Amplification and Learning. This platform will basically translate complex scientific articles into simple language so even the common man can understand. Let's say there are scientific research papers, right, which is heavy with technical jargons. Common man like you and me, we can't understand the details of these scientific articles. But through the Saral app, which has been developed through ANRF's funding, you can get a quick summary, a simplified summary of the research article. Is that clear? So this can enable the spread of scientific knowledge, research, and development. It can influence drug discovery. It can influence various industries from aerospace to defense to developments in the field of climate change, energy, etc. So all these sectors can benefit by using the app, by simplifying the scientific papers, getting the gist out of it, and using it for applications across industries. So ANRF is a major initiative of the government of India, the Anusandhan National Research Foundation. It's modeled on the American model. So the ANRF has been set up mainly to fund scientific research and development and innovation. It replaced the former Science and Engineering Research Board, the SERB. So today, the ANRF has been provided with 1 lakh crore capital to fund research and innovation initiatives. It will bring private sector funding as well, right? It's not just the government which brings public sector funding, there will be private sector funding, and it will decide to fund which academic research projects and research and development initiatives. So this is a big step, the establishment of ANRF, a big step of the Modi government. So Saral app will help in simplifying scientific literature into very simple uh, articles which can be understood by the common man as well. Next, coming to the last topic for today, the Minister for Electronics and IT has spoken about a scheme, the ECMS, the Electronics Component Manufacturing Scheme. This was a scheme launched recently by the Government of India in April 2025 to incentivize electronics industry and the component industry in the country. So it's an incentive based scheme. The incentives are given on the basis of output and also on the basis of employment generated. So it's not your regular PLI. Production linked incentive scheme is only on the basis of output, right? But the ECMS is slightly different. The incentives given out here is based on the output, the production output, and the jobs created. So it is designed to push the private sector to invest in electronic component manufacturing in the country. And this includes semiconductor fabrication as well. So this initiative, this incentive scheme is part of India's semiconductor mission, which is a national mission to transform India into a semiconductor hub. So this is designed to promote domestic manufacturing of electronic components, semiconductor fabrication, etc. And according to the minister, the applications received are double than what the government had expected. The government was expecting investments worth up to 4.5 lakh crore rupees, but double the applications have been received, and the investments proposed by all the private sector companies is to the tune of more than 10 lakh crore rupees. That shows the enormous response of the industry to this government to this government initiative. And through this, India plans to ensure that we domestically produce essential electronic components and semiconductor chips and fabrication plants in the country to reduce our dependency on imports, especially Chinese imports. So on this note, I bring my discussion to an end. I hope you have understood all the key topics. And if you like the session, do press the like button, share your comments, share the video with other aspirants as well, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching.